Welcome to a new episode of the Beauty of Business podcast. Today's guest is a Swedish entrepreneur and founder that helps schools, sport teams, and organizations with fundraising. Welcome to the podcast, Oskar.
Thank you so much, Alexander. Happy to be here.
Awesome. You're the founder of Kaffekassan in
Yeah,
Swedish.
exactly.
Um,
Exactly. Kaffekassan. Exactly.
where did this idea come from?
So, to give you the short and sweet summary, me and my friend, we both wanted to start a business about 10 years ago. And his father was actually importing a lot of like saffron from Iran. And we just thought to ourselves, like, damn, this is a great opportunity for us to like use this contact we have and try to like supply school classes and sport teams with saffron because we know that they need to sell products to gain a profit to go on a
Yeah.
school trips together. So that's where we started. And we kind of failed miserably at it because we realized after starting that people only buy saffron usually like November and December. We didn't even think about that before starting.
Yeah.
So after we realized that, we changed to coffee, and then we actually failed miserably again because we didn't have a lot of skills, and we were both like working our day jobs. So it turned out that we both like paused and like we stopped doing it for 5 years actually, and then 5 years later, just before COVID, I started it again to yeah, to build something great. And
Yeah.
here we
And
are.
and um, like you said, you just quit your job and like went all in on this business just when COVID hit. Um, how did you navigate this challenge in the beginning? Like this business specifically is also travel related in terms of
Yeah.
what they are selling the price for. So how
Yeah,
did
so
you?
first of all, I Mm. I quit I told my boss that I'm quitting my job before COVID hit.
Mhm.
And when COVID actually hit, in my mind it was always like this is gonna end within 2 weeks, next month, no problem. And that was going on like in my mind for like 2 years, and it was quite horrible because yeah, it was a pretty desperate place after like 1.5 year, and it's like, is this even gonna work out? And I'm like living out of my savings accounts that I built up from working, and I literally had like no money to my name
Yeah.
after working like 60, 70 hour work weeks for almost 2 years. So yeah, at a point there, I thought I was going crazy for like even trying. But something very beautiful happened when the media stopped reporting about COVID.
Yeah.
I remember this quite clearly. This was in the beginning of January 2022. The media
Hmm.
reporting just stopped.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we had like a few TikTok creators that we collaborated with for like really cheap.
Mm.
Like those videos took off, and also like our own organic TikTok videos took off. And it was like from one day to the next, our business 10x in terms of like the amount of customers that came in. And from there, it was like a whole new complete set new problems, but better problems. So then I had like a lot of like cash flow problems, IT systems crashing on me, and yeah, a lot of other painful problems, but it was better problems than before because now we actually had much more revenue coming in, and it was
Yeah.
in a way easier to solve all problems.
Yeah, that
So
makes
that was great.
sense. It's like it's a lot easier to solve most problems when you have more cash flow. It's like you can throw money at it or hire people to do it for you.
Yeah, for sure. I've always thought that if I can fix the revenue problem, I can fix all the other problems. I mean, in reality, it might not be that easy, but it's uh, it's usually impossible to fix all problems without revenue. So you
Yeah.
definitely need it. So yeah.
Um, from my perspective, this niche, and I don't mean a coffee niche in particular, but kind of the fundraising for the class trips and sports trips, and um, it's not very innovative. What's been the major challenges in this business model so far? Because you are doing things quite differently.
I would say one of the things that we're doing differently is just how we're building the organization and team and thinking about how we're working. Because in this industry, people are not like even using social media in some cases. They started using that like a couple of years ago. So for me, that comes from like a digital marketing background. I have done like the complete opposite, and I started with all of the digital marketing online mediums,
Yeah.
and then I just experimented a little bit with like offline channels. So I think we have a very digital first approach, since that's what's modern and what usually scales better and with the economics as well. So yeah, uh, I would say we're very digital first, and
Yeah.
that's been a very key driver for us. We built our own web application so that school classes can sell from their own web shop and so on.
Yeah, and in terms of the marketing, you are doing things differently and you're actually online, which is something when I did some research for this podcast and thought back to when we sold stuff to go on school trips. Uh, it was just usually like the paper pamphlet, and then your parents made a decision, and then you went and sold stuff. Um, you are heavy on TikTok and make great content. You are kind of marketing to the classes and like the school kids instead of the parents, which turns the thing on its head because they obviously have some influence with the decision makers.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, so traditionally, all the players in this market, they market to the parents, and the parents, as you said, they make the decisions. So we do the complete opposite and focus on all of the school classes and the kids in the school classes, because what I realized is that they are the ones that are actually doing the selling of the products. Those are the people that needs to be engaged. So now, like with our model, we're getting the kids to go to the parents and say, "Hey, I want to sell this from this company,"
Yeah.
and that's much better because the parents are usually they don't want to do these kind of like fundraising activities anyways.
Yeah.
So if a kid says like I want to do this, then it's just like, ah, perfect, let's do that. And um, I experimented with meta ads in the beginning, targeting parents.
Yeah.
And then when I tried to reach people below 18, I realized the CPMs were actually like 10 to 20 times cheaper than the parents. So like me having like the tiniest marketing budget, I
Yeah.
also thought like, damn, I can get like 10x output from this marketing budget if I get this to work as well. And I think that it's kind of like those bets that you have to take and find because it's very difficult otherwise to go against a established players on a market. Like the two players in my market are like more than half of the market right now, and they've been around for 30 plus years. So it's they have a really good brand awareness
Yeah.
across Sweden. So yeah, we need to be a bit crazier. Um, and it's funny because when I've like recorded TikToks with like influencers in Malmö, when I've like went out with them as well to record, we've talked to some children, and some kid told me that like, yeah, there are three big players in this market, and then I was like, my company was one of them, but I think that's only because like of the brand awareness we've
Yeah.
generated, because we're still like 20 times smaller than the biggest player.
Yeah.
So we have a really long way to go in terms of revenues. But awareness-wise, we're pretty far ahead.
Yeah, and I think it would also get more buy-in from the kids that are selling the product as well. So they're probably going a bit harder on the selling as well because they uh, recognize the brand more and kind of relate to the brand more than the usual kind of old ones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's a factor as well that
Yeah.
they've seen a lot of other TikTok creators and other people sell it successfully, and they believe it in their mind like this is possible
Yeah.
to sell as well.
Um, your main product is coffee, and then you have expanded to a couple of different ones as well. But
Mm.
coffee is obviously a fresh product. How did you find the right suppliers to work with?
I think the short answer is that I tried a few different ones, and to be honest, there's no like for me it hasn't been like any like secret sauce to finding a good supplier, and it's a bit of a challenge. I actually was surprised on like how difficult it is to work with some suppliers. So I think like you really have to like try to test work with someone as like
Yeah.
in the same way as like when you bring on a new employee or a new business partner or a new agency, you have to like test out the partnership for at least like a couple of months to see like is this working good together? Do I have a good feeling in my stomach, etc. And then like make a decision after that. Because it's so difficult to, for me at least, to find a like great partner upfront for those kind of sourcing activities.
Have you had any difficulties or challenges with the suppliers you've worked with or tried out?
Yeah, I've had issues like when the business really took off in 2022, we had a lot of like cash flow problems where at one point in like and like our business is very seasonality based.
Yeah.
So there was like a certain month where we had bought like a lot of coffee, and then we didn't actually have time to ship it out and get paid from the customers. So we were like I was sitting with like almost zero in the bank account, and I had like an invoice of 1 million. So I had to do the right thing and run to Chile. No, I at that point I called my supplier and
Yeah.
just told them the truth, and then we could like arrange a payment schedule. So in the end, it turned out great. They're still my supplier today, and I could like part-time pay them 100,000 a week. It felt like I felt like a bit of a criminal while doing
Yeah.
it, but like reflecting back on it, I realized that um, it was probably like the best I could do to just be honest and transparent about it because cash flow problems was a lot more common than I thought.
Yeah.
But what surprised me was that like the amount of like bad feelings I got from it, and like almost like shame feelings of like I'm a bad person because I can't pay my bills. So it's 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 a very common challenge for like growing businesses, of course, like to have cash flow
Yeah.
problems, and there are a lot of solutions as well. So
Yeah, and you don't get paid until you ship your product. So if you have like a short amount to pay the invoice and it doesn't actually get shipped, then you are pretty
mm,
much screwed. So it's yeah, I believe it's a lot more normal than what we think, especially going into business, like seeing people like succeeding, and then there are cash flow problems honestly everywhere.
yeah, exactly, and especially like when a business is growing rapidly, it's and have like lower margins, then it's really
Yeah.
really difficult. That's always what I've tried to focus on. Like instead of trying to use like loans and use credits and stuff, I've just tried to like fix my margin so we
Mm.
make a better like a net return, based net profit return, so that our cash flow problems decreases over time, and also like to negotiate really hard with all of the suppliers with the terms of payment. That's like been a huge thing. We import some of our products from China, and China can be a bit tricky when importing from, since there's a completely different culture. And yeah, so you really have to like have a good relationship with your Chinese supplier if you're gonna get like good payment terms.
Yeah. And the more you spend with them, the the more flexible they get. So,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly, exactly. Have you had any experience with Chinese suppliers yourself?
no, so we or like indirectly, yes, but we usually just run ads or
Mm,
make creatives and stuff. But some of our clients have suppliers from China, and we kind of see how they work. And also have been in the marketing and online business space for many years now, and you hear
mm,
stuff, and it's very interesting and fun. And now, especially with political changes, how things
yeah.
will affect different businesses as well will be uh, interesting to see if some people actually get hurt from it, which I
Mm,
believe they will. Um, so, uh, but yeah, it's interesting to see the customer service increase with the budgets.
yeah. But yeah, definitely. I just thought about a final thing with the credit terms when it comes to
Yeah.
China and what you said. Uh, it's actually so true what you say, like with if you pay more, because I remember when I negotiated the payment terms with them, I just remember like trying like five or six different things to say, and then just like, what about if I pay you more? I'll pay you
Yeah.
2% more for everything. And they're like, yeah, sure, let's do that.
Yeah. More money, less
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very interesting to see, and of course it helps paying more and spending more. Of course, you want to take better care of your clients, but I think customer service should be great across the board. Um, but yeah, when you have like 10,000 clients, it's probably easier to tier people.
Do you mean like from the Chinese supplier perspective, or
Yeah,
in
I mean,
general for
yeah, in
e-commerce?
general, for businesses in general, like
Mm,
you should have great customer service anyway. But
mm,
I understand it from a business perspective as well. You spend more, you get better service. It's very easy to look at the balance sheet.
mm. Have you, yeah, like since you're working with a lot of different clients, I assume it's a lot in the e-commerce space.
Yeah.
Have you seen like clients started working with AI agents in terms of like doing their customer supports and using more automation like the last 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, we've seen especially the chatbots. Um, what I see the issue is a lot of people implement it before it's ready for them, which means
Mm,
they are using like a general chatbot that they haven't thought about their customers, their products is like just a off-the-shelf automation or robot.
yeah.
So it's works fine, but it's not optimized for them. So the customer service actually declines, which is an issue because you think you save time, but really you can actually lose the customer because of the robot. So um, we've seen it a lot more. Like big businesses have always had some form of it, but we've seen smaller businesses implement it. Um, I think it's definitely has its place, but you have to teach it your business and not just business or service in general. Um, so that's kind of the issue I see. The positive side is, of course, there's less hours and less money to spend on customer service.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds cool. Yeah, we're using a chatbot called Chatbase. It's pretty
Yeah.
good, where we can like it analyzes our website, and based on that it can give like appropriate responses to the customers, and we can also see all of the responses and train it if it gives like a bad response to it. So it's pretty good. But I'm looking into now if we can like not just use a chatbot, but use kind of like a central intelligence that exists in the email, chat, SMS, everywhere, like even in our Slack channel, so that if someone emails us, they get the same response as if they would have chatted with us,
Yeah.
but just like formatted differently, but the same information basically. But it takes time to implement these things because there's a lot of other stuff that's happening at the same time. So
Yeah. Yeah, you have to actually build it as well. But are you in terms of the business you're in, do you use any other automations or implementing AI in other places than customer service?
not so much right now. The most I think like I mostly use like AI and automation for my personal productivity and
Yeah.
encourage my employees to do the same, of course. Um, but I haven't really like implemented it yet. But I have an ongoing project where I've hired a offshore consultant to build me like an AI agent for me that exists in Slack, so that
Yeah.
I can send an email from Slack and book a meeting and like add a task, create a task, um, give me like the what's the task for today or next week, those kind of like
Cool.
admin tasks. So and
Um,
you?
yeah, we usually not, it's more like we use ChatGPT or Claude to brainstorm or write stuff.
Mm,
Um, so we train different channels for different clients, for example, and then we just tweak it and tweak it and tweak it until it's good
mm,
enough. And then we take what they have written or kind of ideated and then just polish it and then publish. So it's mostly for written tasks. And then, of course, the automation side, we use like automations when leads come in and they get a automated email follow-ups.
mm,
But of course, we follow everything very closely because we have to, because
mm,
things are happening so quickly and our clients are asking questions every day. But I've also been like a little bit on the fence because it's so hype that people want to just implement instead of like looking, is this something we actually need or can it help us? And also what you're
mm,
talking about is like um, to implement it takes time. And what's the ROI of actually implementing um, this into our business? So we've used it and tested it, but it's like building systems for it if you don't have the use for it, or it takes time for revenue generating tasks, then uh, it's like be be a little bit chill and see what it takes.
mm. Yeah, it seems like to me that there like the technology is already out there to do a lot of great stuff to save
Yeah,
costs, increase revenue. But usually the people that can implement it are very technical and nerdy about the technology, and they don't really see the business side of it. So
yeah,
it's the business folks don't really. There needs to be like more maturing in this market, I think, before we see like a widespread adoption of AI technologies.
yeah. I completely agree, and it's like people who haven't like they're not IT enough or online enough to use like regular automations that are suddenly we need to implement AI into our service flow or
Mm,
internal teams. Um, it's like you should understand what this actually does. And then we also have the ever ongoing task of discussions about privacy in terms of data handling and stuff, which is
mm.
in the EU especially is rough.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of things to keep in mind.
Yeah,
But I'm a bit
sure.
I'm a bit curious to know, like you, I've never run an agency. I kind of like regret it almost because I feel that the business I started was more complex than I could handle,
Yeah.
and I feel that agency would be Not that it's like simple that to run an agency is absolutely not, but like from the business model side,
Yeah,
I think it's more simple in the terms of like you can make it quite simple if you like focus on one type of client, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah.
But how much of like systemizing operations do you do in the
Um,
agency?
we've worked a lot on it now because of like 6, 7 years in the business and kind of doing everything manually and every system and process doing it manually. So now uh, we have like some automations going on, and also we build SOPs, like systems for like onboarding and reporting and all the like admin tasks that we need to do. Um, there are systems and automations in place for them. But like you say, it's a lot more, it's a lot simpler business model than we don't have like inventory. We don't have to ship anything. It's just services online, which also makes the margins pretty high. Um, so yeah, I definitely agree with you. And it's in terms of your marketing background as well, it's probably something you'd be great at.
Yeah, but I'm curious, like, do you create SOPs for like the actual delivery in some regards as well, or is it usually just like onboarding and reporting and admin tasks?
Yeah, for some of the clients, like when we talked about this between the cuts, we've worked with a lot of different businesses. So when it comes to like standard service for like smaller businesses, those are
Mm,
mostly systematized. But as soon as you get to kind of a bigger budget or a more complex client, then things have to be more thoughtfully planned out. But let's say
mm,
you spend like 10,000 a month, Norwegian or Swedish, on ads. There is not much different from that to another client who spends the same thing. Even if they're in different industries or sell different products, it's usually the same. So that
mm,
stuff can be systematized and kind of made SOPs on. But we have more complex e-com stores, for example, with like 3, 4 thousand products and spending 1 million a month on ads, then it's more like very hands-on, very different approach.
mm. Okay, okay, wow. Yeah, I can imagine that like the bigger the budget, the more like
Yeah,
you just have to have a skilled person
yeah,
doing the actual work. But that's interesting. I'm actually in the process now is to systematize my business a bit more, and I haven't like I don't have any actual like need of selling my business, but I want to make it sellable
mm,
so that it's also like it can be like a choice for me because if I have a job, if I have a 9 to 5 job, I just quit my job. But if I want to quit my business,
yeah,
that usually means I want to sell it. And then
yeah,
if I want to sell it, I want to get as much as possible for it,
yeah.
and that the person buying it is like the right person for it. So it's much more difficult in a way to escape your business than it is like to escape a job.
Yeah, and I've talked with a lot of people about this in terms of the agency model as well. If you're not going to build it to be like a huge, huge business, we're talking like the big marketing firms, it's almost impossible to sell because
Mm,
usually all the relationships with the clients and stuff are connected to you personally. So if you're gonna like exit the business, it's usually on a contract with the buyer for 2 to 3 years. So we've had talks in the
mhm,
past like selling the client list, but then your returns are minimal. Um, or selling like the whole business with the processes and the clients, but then it's usually a 24 to 36 month contract with the new
mm,
owner. So, um, but I actually wanted to talk to you about this because you've helped over 100,000 students reach their goals with your business in terms of
mm.
what's the goal, like the end goal of your business.
Like the goal is to make the Kaffekassan the most like well thought of company within the fundraising space in the
Yeah.
Nordics, and to be like perceived as the obvious choice for school classes and sport teams that want to fundraise, basically. Yeah. So
Um,
that's the end goal for the company.
how scalable is the business model? Because like if you just don't reflect about it or like think about it, it seems very small. But like you said, you have a couple of competitors in Sweden alone, and they make a lot of money and has a
Mm.
lot of market share. So how scalable is this solution?
I think like the things we're doing right now, we could probably scale it like 10 to 15 times bigger, like just in Sweden, Finland, Norway alone.
Yeah,
But I think if we want to do it like even bigger, we need to look at outside markets, maybe Europe, maybe Australia, the US, the UK, etc. There's some differences within like the fundraising in different cultures. So
yeah,
even though like Norway, Finland, Sweden is pretty similar, it's still like a difference, especially in Norway. We have like the Russebus, and
yeah,
it's pretty crazy in Norway. That's very crazy.
yeah. That's a interesting market to say the least. You're kind of
Yeah.
bombarded with options, and there are more coming as well. So I think the market is pretty competitive.
Yeah, exactly. It's very competitive in Sweden as well, but what I've noticed is that there's like 5 companies each week that starts almost. But like no company usually reaches above like 1 million or two in revenue.
Yeah,
And if you don't do more than that, then you don't have the funds to finance a team. And if you don't have a team, then it's quite difficult to succeed in any market really.
yeah.
So yeah.
But in terms of team, when you hire, what do you look for?
Like in the beginning, I looked for, I hired a lot of like free interns, and then I just hired the best ones after like the trial period. And I hired them usually like part-time. A lot of them were still students. Some of the employees actually started out as interns and still are working in the business today, which is really fun. Um, and I went a lot on like just overall engagement and interest in the role and business rather than like specific skills. But right now, I've kind of like changed my recruitment philosophy a little bit because there's different stages and levels to doing business, and I feel like coming to this point like was possible with the mindset that I had before, but now if I need to do a lot more like research of like the actual competencies of the person that I'm trying to bring in. And it doesn't need to have like need to be an employee. It can be like an outside consultant or agency as well. Um, but the difficult things for me now is like to actually know what problems I have and like really define it. Because if I can define the problem, then I can also find a person or a company that has done the specific thing before
Yeah,
in like a related industry. For my business, it's e-commerce is pretty closely related. So let's say I wanna like triple my Meta ads budget, um, then I need to find maybe a person or agency that have done that before in a very similar industry where like the business have like the same kind of problems that I have.
yeah,
Because in our business, it's kind of like almost B2B marketing because we don't get like any customers after advertising. So I'm using metrics such as like MER
mhm,
and like percentage of sales, no, like percentage of net revenue, and then I'm looking at like a quarter, and
yeah,
then I'm spending an amount of money based on that, and then I'm looking after that. So it's like in e-commerce, you usually have the feedback loop of 24 hours, 48 hours,
yeah,
but I'm looking at like 3 to 6 months, and it's quite mentally heavy. So
yeah.
and not a lot of people have like nailed that one.
No,
So
but I can understand it from like from an agency perspective as well. We are actually working on kind of changing this in our philosophy, like we talked about in terms of the new agency. But we are very used to seeing like the ROAS and the ROI on ads within the 24 cycle, and
Mm,
I think it's hurting marketing as a whole in terms of like creativity and actually the philosophy and psychology why we buy things and who we buy from. Um,
mm,
so we are trying to do a different approach going forward because we also are seeing major changes on the advertising platforms, which means we have to do better work on the creative, on the copy as well. It's not just hyper targeting 2016 ads. So I think it takes a different person and psychology to do the marketing and advertising you guys are doing because you have to wait 2 to 3 months before you actually have a feedback cycle, um,
mm.
which I think is very interesting. But it's also painful to wait.
Yeah, especially when it's your own money that you're spending. So it's
Yeah,
different. It is different.
I can imagine. Um,
Yeah.
you touched on like making the business sellable. Would you ever sell?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, I think it's very important to like be honest with yourself, I think, and like answer the question like, are you like, am I the best person fitted to run this company? And I don't think that like that would be true in forever. Like just as you have like a job and you work in the industry, you might think it's interesting for doing it 10 years, but then after 10 years you want to change it to something else. So I think it's natural. And I just want to make sure that if the day comes where I feel that I want to go into another industry or I want to try to start another company, then I have the possibility to sell if
Yeah.
I wanted to. Um, so do you want to make an offer?
Not right now. Not right now.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
joking.
you are doing great work, so I'll leave you to do continue great work, and then we'll
Thanks, man.
see. Oh, it's very cool, and it's also interesting to see someone taking like such a like dry niche and doing something different. It's basically what I think of as like entrepreneurship and like actually doing great work. Um, because there are like very many hype cycles and stuff you could get onto, but this is
Mm,
taking some existing thing that is pretty much dry and also completely dominated by like one or two suppliers and changing the industry, which is it's so cool to see. So hats off.
thanks, man. I appreciate it. And I think just speaking from um, like ideation perspective, when you're gonna like thinking about starting a new business, I think it's so easy to miss these days, like the obvious basics of
Yeah,
like a business is just a solution to a customer problem. And if you go after a new shiny like AI business idea, like it's very unclear a lot of times, like what's the actual problem here that we're solving?
yeah,
And I think that's like the important part of a business idea, like what's the actual problem and who has that problem? And before like deciding to go into this business, like I already understood the market a little bit since I had sold products myself when I was younger. And I also saw how like the competitors were doing. I saw their revenues, profits, their assets, and like it was already a validated market.
yeah,
So I didn't have to do like any validation in that sense, but I needed more like to validate that the operational risk that existed that I could like deliver on that. Uh, so uh, so yeah, it's a like it's a big misconception and myth that a lot of entrepreneurs likes risk,
yeah,
but I think it's so false. It's I think it's the opposite. Entrepreneurs hate risks. It's just like entrepreneurs can. mitigate the risks by
Yeah.
working and being thoughtful
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. I don't think it's like the entrepreneurs like risk. They're just willing to take it, and then of course, like
Yeah.
you say, mitigate it as we go. But it's like the willingness to actually put yourself out there and take the risk. That's the difference, I think, because if you have a too high risk tolerance, you'll probably gamble a lot, and then you'll lose in the long term.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but as well said, in the beginning, it's definitely like taking that big leap of faith and just trying it out and
Yeah.
hoping for the best. But you can't you can't risk too much. It's then you don't want to make like bets where you gamble the whole business.
No.
So
And what advice would you give to founders and entrepreneurs?
so the advice I would give is to follow your passion. No, I'm kidding. Don't follow your
No,
passion.
no, no.
Screw that shit. No, but I think like a healthy dose of my advice would be to understand the basic economics of your business and focus on profit first. Because I see a lot of people focusing on revenue and headcount, and that's not what like is that's not the lifeblood of any business. Like the lifeblood of any business and the air it needs to breathe is profits.
Yeah.
And I think there needs to be a healthier perspective on profits in general, because that's what allows people to take risks in business and innovate, try new stuff, hire new people, etc.
Yeah, I love it because it's I think you are also like in the startup community in Sweden, and it's the same in Norway. It's about like scaling and just more and more like fundraising for the business,
Mm,
getting investors involved, and of course, for some businesses you need a higher headcount and more money to build. It's a higher burn rate,
mm,
but it's like if you can't sell anything and make a profit, then your business is fundamentally broken. Um,
yeah.
and it's like there are some plays like Spotify is a good example, which I've always said it's a bad business model. It's a great product because it's 20 years of losses, and then they made a profit last year, I think, for the
Mm,
first time ever. But now, of course, their market share is like 80%. So
mm.
that's like the one long-term play that's kind of uh, that works. But for most businesses, you need the profit, like you talked about, and like focus on actually getting profit and getting sales, not just getting money from investors.
Exactly. And I think Spotify is like the exception, not the
Yeah,
rule. And like in like when I've made the calculations, like in some cases or like in a lot of cases, it's actually better to like raise your prices and drop 20% in revenue and you make the same profits.
yeah,
But I think it might be like hurting to the ego for some people that it's like too much hurting of the ego to go down in revenue. So that like no, let's continue
yeah,
scale. But yeah, it feels to me more logical to focus on the profits instead of the revenue. At least like if the goal of the business is to create like a self-sustainable business that can also like give the owner distributions and have like healthy amount of
yeah,
risk. If you're gonna like I don't know sell the company for a multiple, then it might be more like within a time frame. It might
yeah,
be much more like important to just like screw the profits. We can do profits in 3 years, but for like yeah I'm like owning the business 100%, so for me
yeah.
it makes more sense to just focus on that so that the business can be run in a healthy way.
Yeah, and I
That
guess
yeah.
I guess if you're gonna sell like let's say in 3 to 5 years, if your bottom line is already like very good and the margins are great, you already are turning profit, then the multiple will probably be higher as well because it's quicker returns for the buyer or investor.
Yeah, exactly. And the, one of my friends sold a some IT business for a lot of money, like an IT consultancy, and it was like a like hilarious amount of money that he got for it. But he told me that um, like even though it's a hilarious amount of money, like he's not gonna change a single thing in his life because you don't get to sell a business for that amount of money if you're not like ridiculously rich before
Yeah,
that. So it's kind
makes
of
sense.
like the a momentum that if you are already earning a lot of money, then you can sell your business for a lot of money.
Yeah,
But if you're not, then you can't really sell your business for a lot of money. So
it makes
it's
sense.
yeah.
Awesome. We have a closing tradition on this podcast, which is the single question of what is the beauty of business to you?
The beauty of business to me is the freedom to be able to choose and decide for yourself and accept the mistakes that you do and gain the results when it turns out to be good decisions.
That's awesome, and it's repeating answer to the question is freedom. So I guess that's the motivation a lot of entrepreneurs and founders have.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember my my last job, or like basically all the jobs that I had. It was like I need to escape. Damn it, I feel controlled.
Yeah,
So it's yeah, definitely freedom.
I totally agree. Awesome. This was a great podcast. Where can people find you and your business? We'll link everything in the show notes and in the bio.
Yeah, so I can be found at LinkedIn if someone want to reach out. Our business is Kaffekassan, kaffekassan.se. If someone want to check the website out. And yeah, my email can reach me there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was fun to talk to you, man.